Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's MMA Cycles Market Update. This is Gianni DePoce. It's great, as always, to be with you all on this Friday afternoon. We had another interesting week as Jupiter turned retrograde on the 28th of July. We had a negative GDP number come in at the second quarter in a row, and we also had the Fed hike rates 75 basis points. So despite all this seemingly negative news, markets were able to rise through this data and all of these reports, which is a pretty good sign. And this week, we want to do things a little bit differently. I am going to talk about the upcoming geocosmics next week. The first and most important one is the conjunction between Mars, Uranus, and the North Node in the sign of Taurus on Monday, August 1st. This is going to be a really important geocosmic signature because we have the potential for explosive or unexpected events that could unfold between Mars, the planet of war and violence and aggression, and the planet of Uranus, which is shocks, surprises, and unexpected turns of events. North Node obviously rules the destiny and fated events that seem to unfold, and they are all occurring. This conjunction is occurring in the sign of Taurus, which is very important for financial markets because Taurus rules money, currencies, stock markets, and grains. So we have to keep a close eye on this upcoming aspect. And now what I want to do this week is talk about some ETFs, and specifically the ETFs as they pertain to the upcoming ETF report that we're going to be launching on the 17th of August. It's going to be published. So we're going to be featuring 8 ETFs in this report. ETF stands for Exchange Traded Fund, and this basically is a basket of stocks that trades like a security on the cash exchanges. So the stocks or the ETFs that we're going to be featuring in this report include SPY, which is the S&P 500 ETF, and this is on my screen right now. You can see how we had a pretty bullish week. Prices set to close near the highs of the week and the month, and that's a pretty good sign. But can this rally continue as we head towards that conjunction between Mars, Uranus, and the North Node in the sign of Taurus? Well, that remains to be seen. But this is the main equity ETF that we're going to be analyzing in this report. It's basically a gauge on the broader market, but we also are going to analyze and observe the gold miners ETF. So the ticker symbol on this one is GDX, and precious metals had a very strong week. Both gold and silver seemingly have formed important lows in the last couple weeks, and they exploded higher with silver especially leading the way. But the easiest way, I think, for investors and traders to have exposure to precious metals is through mining shares of mining companies. So if you do not want to buy individual mining stocks to kind of reduce your risk for any individual company, consider ETFs or a basket of mining stocks, and GDX does a good job at that. It does tend to purchase stocks that are in more established mining companies, so that may have some appeal for those that want exposure to precious metals, but a little bit more of a conservative allocation to those types of stocks. So here too, we observe that GDX is going out near the highs of the week, not so much near the highs of the month, but a pretty good rally nonetheless. So we note that a low formed on the 25th of July, which was the same day that Venus formed a square aspect to Jupiter. And this is especially interesting because normally metals don't like Jupiter because Jupiter tends, to bring good things, and metals tend to do better when, world events or monetary events are a bit more tumultuous. But this week, as I mentioned earlier, we did get a negative GDP reading, the second in a row, which typically spells recession. And we had the Fed raising rates. So this is something to keep an eye on as well. We also are going to be featuring a Bitcoin ETF, ticker symbol BITO, for those that don't want to buy Bitcoin outright and store them on an exchange, or any other way, just want to perhaps have it in a traditional brokerage or investment account. This is a good way to get exposure to Bitcoin. And here too, we saw that prices came off a low that formed the day after Venus squared Jupiter. So big aspect coming up with the Mars-Uranus-North Node conjunction in Taurus, especially because so much of the boom that we've seen in cryptocurrencies has been the result of Uranus transiting through the sign of Taurus and the boom bust cycle that tends to unfold when we see that transit. Next comes TLT. This is a long-term bond ETF, specifically of bonds with a maturity of 20 years or more. So this is one of the most heavily traded bond ETFs. It gives traders and investors good exposure to long-term bonds. And this is kind of a bellwether when it comes to economic growth or recession. When you see markets turn down, equity markets, that is, TLT tends to rally the most. And long-term bonds tend to catch stronger bids when the economy is turning down. Conversely, when you're seeing economic growth or inflation in a healthy inflationary environment, you tend to see TLT and long-term bonds lead the way lower. That is, long-term interest rates tend to rally the most in that regard. So interesting position here with the upcoming aspect between Mars, Uranus, North Node, pressing up against technical resistance here. And when Uranus is involved, you have to be keen of a breakout. But is it going to be a legit breakout or a false breakout? Stay tuned, and we will definitely keep you updated on that front. Another ETF that we're going to feature in this report is the United States Oil Fund, USO. This tracks some of the crude oil futures. So if you want exposure to the crude oil market, but don't trade futures contracts, this is a good alternative to have in your portfolio. So we'll be analyzing this same type of, cyclical and geocosmic analysis as we would otherwise employ in our analysis of crude oil futures. But now you have an option and ability to make actionable trades with an ETF that follows that market very closely. So here too, we saw some notable price action right around, we had a low form last Friday, the first trading day before the Venus square aspect to Jupiter, and Jupiter is one of the co-rulers of the crude oil market together with the planet Neptune. Next comes the healthcare ETF. Healthcare is another key market, one of the biggest components in the S&P. We had a nice rally into Thursday. We're reversing back a little bit lower on Friday here, but overall seeing some strong trends unfold in healthcare, and no shortage of demand in this sector given the demographic shift in much of the Western world, but also a unique sector because so much innovation is happening in the healthcare space as well. And I think with Jupiter going back into the sign of Pisces now that it's retrograde, we could see some interesting price moves in the next several weeks or months in the healthcare sector. And also with Neptune being in the sign of Pisces until 2025, 2026, definitely a sector to keep an eye on. Second to last one is the technology ETF. Tech is so important because it's been a secular leader in the bull market since 2008, 2009, meaning that it's been the sector where traders and investors could obtain returns above and beyond the S&P index. So when tech, whatever tech does, the rest of the market tends to follow, and we've seen that unfold this year. As we saw tech peak in December, the rest of the market peaked the following month. The NASDAQ actually peaked the month before, but tech is important. With Saturn in the sign of Aquarius, we saw what was a chip shortage now turning into a shipping or a supply glut. So it went from a shortage to an abundance of supply, and now we see whether this will turn into a headwind for the sector. But ending the week and the month on a pretty strong note here, but with the aspect with Uranus involved, Uranus rules tech, we are lined up for a series of fireworks in the next week or two. And last but certainly not least, by popular demand, we have a home builder ETF. We get a lot of questions on real estate, and so I think this is a great ETF to see what's happening in the home building sector, as home building tends to be a leading indicator for real estate. And so with interest rates coming up in the last several months to year or so, we've seen headwinds mount for the real estate sector, but not a bad rally since mid-June. And this rally happened not long after the sun squared Neptune and formed a trine to Saturn. And then we also had it was actually about a week before a conjunction between Venus and Uranus. So, if you like this type of geocosmic analysis in conjunction with technical analysis and cyclical analysis, would definitely recommend you check out and stay tuned for our ETF report, which is set to drop on the 17th of August. So that's all the time we have for this week. We will be back next week. Ray Merriman is going to be joining me, so definitely want to check that out. And thanks for watching, and check us out at www.mmacycles.com. Thank you.